But it would be nice to say some things that if I actually see them physically, it would be nice to talk about certain things. But right now, mm, yeah, I mean the. Are you rolling?
Roll audio. Clap. The camera was rolling.
Yeah,
I was
okay.
capturing you very candidly.
Okay. Okay. So I think what is the beauty of documentary for me, and that's why I do documentaries, is because the possibilities are so limitless, and you can tell stories in so many different ways. Hi, my name is Arun Bhattarai, and I am an independent documentary filmmaker based in Thimphu. In 2014, I heard that the Bhutan was coming up with the first women's national football team in Gelefu, and I was really interested to go there and see what is going to happen, because I was really interested to tell a story about this about a country which is in transition, and say something about modernity and tradition. I reached Gelefu, and then when I went there, I saw that there were this group of girls who had come from different parts of the country, and then they were playing football. And I thought that this whole football camp, and these girls who are coming from really traditional homes in villages, I thought that this could be a very interesting story of a coming of age story of young girls who are living their traditional homes to take up something which is very modern, like which is football. I
girls youth team में select बनेगी मैं एक ही बात नहीं हाँ कर देंगे
I met Tsering, who is from Bumthang, and I was trying to film with her. Initially, it was very good, but after some time, she started becoming very shy, and she started running from the camera. I started to make a film about friendship inside the football camp, where I took Tsiring's best friend, who was Tashi, and Tashi was actually identified herself as a transgender. So I thought that it could be a very interesting story of the two of them. And in fact, I was also thinking maybe at some stage, what if this turns out to be a love story, So that was also at the back of my mind, but I actually was thinking of making this film about friendship inside this football camp. So I started following them together. However, Tsering was started becoming even more shy, and then it was very difficult to continue this filming process. So I didn't really know what to do. So with Tashi, I went to her home in Bumthang when she went during her summer break, just to see what like her life looked like in her home. So when I went there in Bumthang, I I met the family for the first time. actually, like, I was doing a very small research interview, not even for the film. I had the father, I had Tashi and mom, and then I was asking the father about Tashi, and then the father, out of the blue, he told me that, oh, Tashi must have been a boy in his previous life, that's why he behaves like a boy. So I was like, this was very interesting for me, because I saw that the father was so accepting of Tashi's identity, although he had this monastery and he was a very traditional man.
마바 거 이제 마바 중국어라 거 부스티센 베네디게 때 까차라베라 부스티 첼로페베 안에 배우면 봐 안에 배워달로 마바기 같이 되대 야 거라 해마기 하마기 해마기 거라 이제 박차여 매세 부스기 박차여 매세 뒤에 남좀 레좀 임베세 다들 갑자기 코랄로 코랄로 아치치 봄메기 겨워 톱네되게 때 코아스 때좀 밤수 때문에
I thought that this family can be a very interesting topic. So when I was exploring further, I realized that the father wanted his son to take over the family monastery, which was like 1,000 year old, but the son didn't really want to take over the monastery, but he wanted to play football instead. So I saw that there is another layer to this story as well. So what I thought was that I could kind of incorporate all these different elements, like Tashi's football story, the father wanting to pass down the family monastery to the son, because Tashi and her brother, they shared a very beautiful relationship as well. So I thought this film can now be about generation gap. So that's where I actually found my actual focus for the story.
Cheers. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4.
We thought about the style of the film actually even before we started the shooting, because we wanted to film the story in such a way that it reflected the Bhutanese way of life. I was the cinematographer, and I thought that we could do this with very long and stable kind of wide takes. That was the idea actually. And then we also wanted to do this film in a very observational way. So this process of course came when we were actually doing the film, but to have the style of this film with static frames, like this came like when we were doing the script. It was a big challenge because we chose to do this observational filmmaking. Of course, like in any documentary, you can't really predict what is going to happen. So that's one big challenge. But at the same time, you have to predict. You have to have an idea that, okay, this is how my film is going to begin. Will be the middle of the film, and this is how it's going to end. That you should kind of know, but of course it won't happen, but something close to that will happen in the final film. I spent a lot of time on Reiki, like actually probably like more than like 9 months I was actually doing the Reiki, because of course I was filming as well, but in the end it turned out to be a Reiki, because we never used the footage that we filmed at that time. So it's also about building a relationship with the character. So that's the most important thing. Like for me personally, my film is an outcome of the relationship I have with my character. when I saw Tashi, and I saw that Tashi would always be like alone, like wouldn't spend so much time with the other friends. And then later, I also, when I was spending more time, I realized that she identifies herself as a transgender. And so there were these little elements, and of course, like she used to like to swim more than even football. And then I also realized during that time that she's actually not so good in football, and there is a possibility that she won't make it in the end. For every documentary, research is the most important step, I would say. But sometimes research is also simultaneous to the filming process. Of course, in the beginning, you do a research. For example, sometimes you are like, usually the trigger comes when there is a space or there is a place. For example, in this film, I knew that there is a football academy, so I went there, but I didn't know what was going to happen. But when I went there, I had to do my research. Like I had to know when this football academy was started, and so why is this so important for these girls who are coming from these villages and then staying there and playing football. So I had to know this whole background information. Of course, this is just the background information, and this doesn't go into the actual filmmaking process itself, but it's very important, because if you have this, if you know about these elements, then that way you can make the film more universal, I would say. In the next Guardian, we have in one frame in the beginning of the film where the father is right in front of the monastery. It's a wide shot, and he's playing the drum, and he's basically practicing cham. And later, towards the middle of the film, we have the same frame where Gembo is actually playing football. So I used these two shots in front of the same monastery because I wanted to contrast the two different worlds of the traditional world of the father and the more like modern world of Gembo, to show their kind of hobbies also in some way. Like the father is obsessed with this tradition, and that's his world, and then Gembo is more obsessed with phones, with football. So that's his dream. So basically that was the main idea, to contrast these two worlds. You don't need to see the sea, but it's enough if you can kind of hear the sea, and sometimes that has even a bigger effect on the audience. In my film, there are some scenes. Now I'm giving example of two scenes. One is a scene where the father and Tashi, they are going towards the father is going to drop Tashi to the bus stop basically, and Tashi is going to say goodbye. And then the father is actually giving a long lecture, which I knew that father would do because I knew the father's characteristic. And then we knew that we don't need to necessarily show the father, but it would be enough if we can hear the father. But when he's talking, we wanted to show other elements like the landscape passing by, and then at that time actually there was a nice snowfall, so it was a really good moment for us to film because we could actually kind of show the snowfall, and we don't really necessarily need to see what the father is saying. It's enough that we hear what he's saying. So similarly, there is another scene when the father is also dropping Gembo to the monastery. So there also we actually see the lot of the landscape. The as we are going in the car, we also see Gembo's face, but we don't necessarily see father talk. And I thought that is even more powerful actually, because that way we can actually enter into what Gembo must be thinking or in his psychological space, you know, like, and see his reaction, but don't actually see what the father is saying. So for me, like, sometimes sound can also come before image, you know. It doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily need to think of the image first, but sometimes you need to think about the sound first, and then accordingly you think what image you want to shoot.
Yana mina, yana timjana, yana tina awe sang tongdel bu sang sadi bu sang yokma yana ni tongdel wen. Tongdel tongma do wan yokma yana ni tanam yal tu ko. Timma do wan tin ni timjigi timjana ku gurwen. Yan tongdel wen na tongdel na mina ku gurwen. Timma do wan tin masam la hawen.
Talking about the script, a lot of people say that, oh, it's a documentary, so we don't need to write a script. But I think it's very important to predict what you want to say. So if you can kind of write what you want to say, and when you write, you don't necessarily need to think that, okay, I want to write it in a certain structure. But I think when you write, you need to think that you are writing a story. So you just basically write whatever comes to your mind and whatever you kind of anticipate happens in the actual story. So that way, when you actually finish writing the story, you can also explain this to the crew with whom you are working, and at the same time it also helps you and see like what your actual film is about.